Hi, I'm Jessica, coming to you live from Nautilus Mission Control at the Inner Space Center in Rhode Island. We're very excited to be joined today by Dr. Bob Ballard, President of the Institute for Exploration and driving force behind Nautilus Live. Now, Dr. Ballard joins us from the studio on board the exploration vessel Nautilus. The ship is currently in the Mediterranean Sea between Sicily and North Africa. And as you can see from our live feeds, our ROVs Hercules and Argus are currently in the water, exploring submarine volcanic cones, looking for geologic activity and interesting biology. But for the next 20 minutes or so, Dr. Ballard will be answering your questions live. So if you have any questions for Dr. Ballard, feel free to type them in, along with your name and the state where you live, using the Send a Question tab to the right. Also, keep in mind he's about 5,000 miles away, so there'll be a slight delay between my question and his answer. Finally, if you want to get back to the live feeds on the ship, feel free to switch over to Channel 2 or the Quad. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Bob. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I wanted to start off by asking you a little bit about this season. Can you give us some of the highlights from this 2011 expedition?
Well, it's been an amazing expedition. We're in our 4th month. Second to last mission. We'll be here another week or so. We're presently working on the southern coast of Sicily. We'll wrap up the season off Israel. But it started with a great series of discoveries in the Black Sea. We started in that area because we have such a fascination with the Black Sea, because like no other body of water on the ocean, it has no oxygen at depth. And we discovered some of the most perfectly preserved ancient shipwrecks we've ever discovered. And we'll be coming out with a lot of news about them as we report upon that effort. We then came down past the Bosporus, went through the Bosporus, past Istanbul, through the Sea of Marmara and into the Aegean. A tremendously successful effort as well along the ancient trade routes of the Ionian coast, which is now the southern coast of Turkey, off of ancient Halicarnassus. Lots and lots of shipwrecks were discovered dating back to the classical period. And then we went over to Santorini and dove in the active volcano Colombo, did an amazing mapping area. It's like going to Dante's Inferno. Literally, this entire caldera is boiling down below. We discovered that the caldera is, the water is actually very dangerous, it turns out. We realize now that there's a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide in solution in that volcano. I don't know if you remember, in one of the volcanoes in Cameroon in Africa, when it had a turnover and all that CO2 came out and killed all the people living on the slopes of that volcano. So the Greek government now realizes this volcano poses much more threat to their population than they thought before. After that, we went and worked on the Tyrrhenian Sea near the lighthouse of the Mediterranean. It's called Stromboli. It's an active volcano. It's an area where 2 plates are in collision, and as one plate descends beneath the island of Sicily, it melts and comes back up. And if you've been reading the news, you know that Etna on the island of Sicily is erupting right now. So it's a very active area. We found hydrothermal venting, all sorts of amazing things. And then we headed even further west towards the Pillars of Hercules, to the entrance to the Mediterranean at Gibraltar, working with our Spanish colleagues. We literally ran right into, although didn't run, we encountered, we didn't hit it, was a Roman shipwreck. We were actually there to do a geological mapping of the submarine canyons there, but out of the gloom came this amazing late century, late Roman period shipwreck. We then went through the Pillars of Hercules, went out into the Atlantic working with our Portuguese colleagues, and explored an area where the African plate and the Eurasian plate are having at it, and in that great compressional collision, a piece of the mantle has been pushed up, and we were exploring parts of the Earth that you normally don't get to see because they're deep, deep inside the Earth, but they were literally pushed up and exposed for us to sample. And then we doubled back to the expedition we're on right now, south of Sicily, diving in an area of where there was a recent volcanic eruption well, it was recent geologically. It was in 1891. Where we are right now, this area erupted in a violent eruption that blew up to the surface, and these big volcanic bombs floated to the surface, then they blew literally. And there were so many of them it looked like there was an island, but in fact it was floating rocks But once those rocks exploded, they fell back to the bottom, and we're sampling them right now. So it's been a hot and heavy, literally hot and heavy series of missions, and we're looking forward to wrapping it up and getting home in time for Thanksgiving.
Well, thanks so much for the update. It's been a really exciting season, and we've got tons of questions coming in for you now. I'm going to start with a question from New Mexico. Madison and Lily would like to know, how did you know how to build the ROVs you used, and how much did they cost?
Well, we've been building ROVs for a long, long time. I've had ROVs since 1988 when we used them, and also before that when we went down to the Titanic and sent our first ROV that I ever built was Jason Jr. And Jason Jr. went down the grand staircase of the Titanic, which was very cool. So we literally build our own because you can't go to Home Depot and find them. It's not that plentiful. So all of our remotely operated vehicles are built by our team. Jim Newman has been our project engineer on most of our vehicle development. The costs of them vary. Hercules is probably about a $3 million vehicle. Argus is probably $750,000. Little Herc is probably $500,000. Echo, our side scan sonar system, is about $250,000. So they vary in size, complexity, and cost.
But they're pretty expensive machines. I've got another related question coming in from Nishita, who would like to know, what are some other robots that are used to explore the ocean floor besides Hercules?
Well, when I was at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, where I was for 30 years, I built my first big vehicle system. It was called Jason, and it was supported by a vehicle called Argo. So Argo and Jason are very similar to Hercules and Argus, and so those are the ROVs that I've been involved in the development of. But ROVs are now becoming much, much more pervasive. They're used heavily by the oil industry. They've replaced the use of divers in offshore oil rigs. They're much safer, and people don't get hurt. So there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of remotely operated vehicles. But most of them don't go as deep as ours.
And I've now got a question coming in that's really good. What would you do if you lost all hydraulics? How many crewmen do you keep on board to deal with those sorts of problems?
Well, we have a great engineering team. We have quite a number of engineers, and many of them mechanical engineers who are very adept at dealing with hydraulic problems. And we do have hydraulic problems, particularly commonly with our manipulators, because when we go down and we start trying to break things loose, we can literally spring a wrist and start leaking oil. Now it's harmless oil, it's vegetable oil. But still, when you leak oil, salt water comes in, and that renders our manipulators not functional. So we have to retrieve the remotely operated vehicle and fix our manipulators. And we don't have to do it a lot. I think we've done it a couple times in the last 4 months. So it does occur, but we're now very careful. Our manipulators actually have force feedback, so we can feel when we're reaching stiff resistance, and we just back off.
Yeah, and we've been watching the engineering team do great work all season. Now I've got a question coming in from Mystic Theater to Dr. Ballard. How did you get into exploring?
Well, I started very early. I mean, when I was just a young child and I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I decided I wanted to be a deep sea explorer, and I started early. I started swimming, and then I started diving. I got a scholarship when I was in high school to go out on my first oceanographic cruise. So I think if you want to do something, do it and start early. And I've been at it now 52 years, and I've done over 130 expeditions, and it just keeps getting better and better.
And Caitlin and Haley from New Mexico would like to know, how many shipwrecks have you found and explored?
Oh, I've lost track. I know that less than 100, but more than 50 would probably be the number, and probably equal between being ancient shipwrecks and contemporary shipwrecks. We found lots and lots and lots and lots of shipwrecks, and probably more to come.
Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about biology. Caden would like to know, how many species of different kinds of animals have you found?
Almost. It seems like every time we go on an expedition we find new species. Certainly, particularly when we're dealing with in hydrothermal vents, when we first discovered them, everything we looked at were new species. So, in fact, new phylums, which is a big deal when you find new phylums. So it's not uncommon for us to find new species of animals on our explorations because we're really going where no one has gone before, and there's a lot of critters that have never been seen before.
And Griffin has a somewhat related question. When you were videotaping fish like the shark and swordfish, did any of them attack Hercules?
Well, the shark, I thought he was going to, at first he was afraid of us and sort of ran away, and we sort of went towards him, and then he turned on us and came back, and we thought he might take a bite out of us. He didn't, but then we went away, and then we saw him sneaking in behind us because we have another vehicle, Argus, saw the shark coming in from behind Hercules, and so we stopped, and he went away. We have been attacked in the past. I've been attacked several times by swordfish in deep diving submarines. We had one swordfish attack us and literally stuck itself in the submarine and couldn't get away, and we brought it up and had it for dinner. It was a great fresh swordfish.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit scary. I've got a question now from Hiba. What is the most interesting organism that you have ever found?
Oh, wow. I would have to say the giant tube worms that we found in the Galapagos hydrothermal springs. They were strange as you could be. I mean, these worms were 6 feet, 8 feet tall. They had a pint of human-like blood, and they stuck out this red feathery lung so they could breathe. It was very, how would you like a creature that sticks its lung out of its mouth? But I mean, it was pretty odd. I did enjoy what are called the hooded octopods. And these are like octopus that look like umbrellas, and they swim with their ears. They look like Dumbo swimming around, and they're sort of funny. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy creatures. Down here in the deep sea, there's no sunlight, so creatures don't put on a lot of makeup, and they commonly will be transparent. You can literally look inside. It's like having a glass body, and you can look inside and see their heart pumping. So that's pretty wild.
Wow. Well, I've got another question coming from Mystic Theater. A guest from the north coast of Alaska would like to know when you are coming to her part of the world.
Oh, I've been to Alaska several times. We did a great Jason project at Seward, at the research center there, and we've been worked a lot along the coast of Alaska on our Jason project. So I don't know when I'll be coming back. We're going to be moving the Nautilus year after next. We're going to spend one more year in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, and then the year 2013, we're going to begin a journey around the world that will take us to the Pacific. Whether we get up to Alaska or not, I'm not sure. We tend to like to stay between Capricorn and Cancer and have the endless summer.
And now I've got another question. This is a great one for you. Dr. Ballard, thinking back over your entire career, what research and dive site do you think challenged you most? Also, what did you think of 30 Rock's portrayal of you?
I'll do 30 Rock first. That was sort of a hoot. I'm not a big sitcom watcher, so I wasn't even aware of 30 Rock, and still someone said, you were on 30 Rock, and I mistook it for a third planet from the sun or whatever it was. And then I realized it was a sitcom, and I've been on there several times, and they invited me to come on the show, and I initially was going to do it, but then it was conflicted with my son's a thespian, and he had a big play that night, and I wanted to see him in the play, so I declined, and then they had an actor do it, and it was okay. It was cute, and I could always be in denial. Since it wasn't me, it was someone else. But it's fun that they would actually include you in programs like that. So that was great. But getting back to the first part of the question, I've had amazing expeditions. Again, for me, the most significant scientifically was the discovery of these new life forms in the Galapagos Rift, because we didn't know they existed. I mean, I'm best known for finding the Titanic and the Bismarck and Yorktown and PT-109 and ancient shipwrecks and all that. But discovering things I didn't know existed are really, I think, more important. And certainly the discovery of the perfectly preserved shipwrecks we're now discovering in the Black Sea that are in very high states of preservation. I would say that's where the big discoveries are being made in my work right now.
Awesome. Well, we're going to shift focus a little bit and actually talk about the Titanic. As most of you probably know, it was Dr. Ballard and his team that found the Titanic in 1985. And we've got a 4th grade class at an elementary school in Seattle, Washington that's wrapping up a unit on the Titanic. And they've got some very special questions for you, Dr. Ballard. So I'm going to start with one from Rania. She's a big fan. When you found the Titanic, how did you know it was the Titanic? P.S. You're my superhero.
Well, I'm glad for that. Well, you know, when we first came in on the wreckage of the Titanic, and that's what we saw first, we didn't see the Titanic itself. We saw wreckage that had come out of the ship when the ship broke in half. When it sank, it went vertical, and then it broke in half and dumped a lot of things out. And so when we came across it, it was rusty stuff that we couldn't tell if it was the Titanic or not. This was also an area of the North Atlantic shipping lanes, and we knew that the Germans had sunk a lot of ships along this very sea route during World War II. So we actually expected to encounter a lot of stuff from World War II before we found the Titanic. So when we first saw stuff, we sort of looked at it. It was a pipe and it was a piece of wreckage, and you know, you couldn't tell. But then we went over the boiler of the Titanic, and we had a picture of that boiler on the wall in our control van. So we went, you know, look at the picture, look at the video, and we realized that that was uniquely associated with the Titanic. And so that's when we knew that the wreckage we were looking at was actually the Titanic. And then moments after that, we found the stern and then the bow.
And now I've got a question from Kadist, Mars, and Solomon. They would like to know, how did you feel seeing the unsinkable ship nearly a century since it sunk?
Well, it was really interesting because I knew what she looked like, you know, when she sailed. But going down and seeing her, this old lady in her grave, and then seeing many of the artifacts in very high state of preservation. I mean, you could read brass plaques and little tags all over the ship. You know, first class entrance, for crew use only. When you looked at the bollards and capstans, you could read the manufacturer's name. All the china was absolutely, looked like it was made about a minute ago. It was in a very high state of preservation. So that was eerie. And then naturally, to me, the most moving objects we saw were the shoes, because when the Titanic sank and it went to the bottom, after that, the people who drowned and didn't have life jackets on sort of came raining down onto the bottom and landing on the ocean floor. And there are animals down there that would eat any human remains. And then when their skeletons were exposed, the deep sea is undersaturated in calcium carbonate, which is what your bones are made of. So bones actually dissolve. It may take 5 to 7 years, but then the skeleton literally vanishes, evaporates. But what it leaves behind are the shoes, because shoes are made of leather and they're treated with tannic acid, and animals don't like to eat them. So all around the Titanic are pairs of shoes, from the crew members to mother with the daughter's shoes next to her. It was a very, very moving imagery.
Yeah, it sounds like a truly amazing sight. Fabricio would now like to know, are you trying to find any more shipwrecks? What other projects are you working on?
Well, we're really looking for everything. I mean, the Nautilus is an equal opportunity explorer. We're interested in archaeology, anthropology, maritime history, geology, biology. We're literally going where no one has gone before. In fact, where we are right now, no one has ever been, so we don't know what we're going to see. We know we're in an area of active volcanoes, so it wouldn't be surprising if we encountered underwater volcanoes. In fact, I'm sure we will. But it's also an area of ancient trade routes, so there could be, this could be an area where ships sank. So all sorts of things are happening. That's what's exciting about it, is you really don't know what's going to come in until it comes in. And so We use this technology when we find something to network scientists. We have command centers all over the United States, and when you walk into those command centers, you literally step aboard the Nautilus. So when I go home, I'll be leaving Sunday, I'll get back to my home, and I have to go to Belfast for filming where the Titanic was built, but I'll go back and I can step into my command center and literally step aboard the Nautilus. So it's you're never really away from it. You go to the website, nautiluslive.org, put it on your iPhone, your iPad. I mean, you're never not aboard the ship. It's just your body may not be aboard.
Yeah, you can tune in for live exploration anywhere you are at any time. It's really exciting. Now I've got a question from Carol Ann Larson who would like to ask you, Dr. Ballard, if the Titanic never sank, do you think you would still have the same job, or do you think you would have a different job?
Oh, I would still have the same job. I mean, the Titanic was my 70th expedition, and so I was already in the game long before I was, quote, discovered. And I'm basically an earth scientist, so I might not have gone down the road that I went down of finding other shipwrecks. I might not have got involved in ancient shipwrecks had I not found the Titanic, but I would have always stayed and explored in the ocean. That was something I want to do all my life, and there's no reason to ever stop doing that.
Well, sadly, we're all out of time, but Dr. Ballard, do you have any final words of wisdom for the next generation of explorers out there?
I always tell people to follow their passion. Like I said, my son wants to be an actor and loves the classics. My daughter wants to be a veterinarian. So I tell them, you chase your passion. Don't chase the one you think other people want you to chase, because it's very important that you go and pursue what you really want to do, because that's your driving engine through life. So chase your passion.
Well, thank you so much to our audience for all of those great questions, and thank you, Dr. Ballard, for taking the time away from your exploration to talk to us today. Now, if you have more questions for Dr. Ballard, we'll be live with him again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so tune in then and get your questions ready. Again, I'm Jessica here at Nautilus Mission Control. Stay tuned at nautiluslive.org, and now back to the action on the ship.